Silence is a language most people never learn to understand, yet it speaks the loudest when two people are caught in a quiet battle of emotions. In the beginning, she thought your silence was temporary, a momentary pause before you reach back out the way you always did. She expected you to fold first, to text first, to ask what was wrong, to chase after the connection the moment it felt like it was slipping away. But something changed inside you. Instead of reacting, instead of rushing to fix, wasn't yours to fix alone. You chose to sit with the silence. You chose restraint. You chose patience. And that shift, that unexpected strength, is what's starting to scare her because the person she assumed would always break first suddenly isn't breaking at all. At first, she tried to convince herself it meant nothing. Maybe you were busy, maybe you forgot, maybe you needed space today. But as the hours passed, then the day, then the next morning, the silence didn't just remain, it grew heavier. And that's when she started feeling something she didn't expect: uncertainty. She always believed she had the emotional upper hand. She always believed you needed her presence, her attention, her validation more than she needed yours. But now the silence is exposing something deeper, that the connection held more meaning for her than she admitted, that your consistency mattered more than she realized, and that losing your effort would hurt more than she ever wanted to face. Your silence has forced her to look at herself. It's making her question why she expected you to be the one who bends every time, why she assumed you would be the one to apologize even when you weren't wrong, why she became comfortable giving less than she received. It's pushing her to confront her own patterns, her own fears, her own hidden insecurities, because the truth is, your silence isn't a punishment, it's a reflection. It reflects the times she took your presence for granted. It reflects the moments she overlooked your effort. It reflects the imbalance you stayed quiet about for too long. And now that silence is teaching her what words never could did, that your peace has value, your energy has limits, and your heart isn't something to be mishandled just because you cared deeply. She thought silence would break you. She thought you would come running the moment she pulled back. But now she's realizing something far more powerful. You've learned how to stand your ground. You've learned that silence can be strength, not surrender. And when a man finally understands the power of his silence, he becomes someone who can't be manipulated by fear, guilt, or emotional games. He becomes someone who chooses himself, even if it means letting someone else feel the discomfort they once ignored in him. The silence is starting to scare her because it's the first time she's seeing the version of you who won't break just to keep someone else comfortable. And when she realizes that, everything changes. There comes a moment in every connection where the person who believed they had full control suddenly feels the ground shift beneath them. And for her, that moment is now. She never expected your energy to change. She never expected your presence to pull back. She never expected to feel the absence of your attention so sharply that it echoes louder than any argument ever could. She was used to the version of you who always showed up, the version who checked in, the version who cared even when she didn't give you the same energy back. But when you stopped offering that familiar comfort, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: vulnerability. And that vulnerability is unsettling her because it's forcing her to see that the connection wasn't as one sided as she pretended. She cared more than she admitted. She depended more than she showed. And she feared losing you more than she ever let herself believe. What she's really afraid of is not your silence, it's the meaning behind it. It's the realization that you've grown, that you're no longer operating from neediness or insecurity, that you've stepped into a version of yourself who knows his own worth. When a man who used to overextend suddenly becomes selective with his energy, it disrupts the entire dynamic. It forces the other person to confront the imbalance they created. It reveals the parts of them that took comfort in knowing you'd always try harder. She's feeling that exposure now, and it's making her rethink every moment she brushed you off, every delayed response, every time she assumed you'd be waiting. Your shift is waking her up to the truth that she wasn't the only one with options. She wasn't the only one who mattered, and she wasn't the only one capable of walking away if the connection stopped feeding the heart. Your change in behavior is not about punishing her, it's about protecting yourself. You finally got tired of feeling like the only one who cared deeply. You finally reached the point where you realize that chasing after someone who isn't meeting you halfway is just another form of self abandonment. So you stopped abandoning yourself, and that decision, that quiet pivot in your energy, is what's making her nervous because she can feel the difference. She can feel that you're no longer reacting from emotion but responding from strength. She can feel that you're not trying to force anything anymore. And she can feel that losing you is now a real possibility, not just an empty fear she never expected to face. What scares her most is the thought that your silence might be a sign that you've outgrown needing her approval. She's starting to understand that you're becoming someone who doesn't chase validation but attracts respect. And when she sees that, she finally realizes that she can't take you for granted anymore because the man who grows in silence becomes harder to lose and impossible to replace. As the days continue to pass and your silence becomes something consistent rather than temporary, she begins to feel the weight of her own decisions in a way she never expected. At first, she thought your distance was just a moment of frustration, something that would fade once you calmed down. She assumed you'd eventually return to your usual pattern, reaching out, checking on her, reminding her that you were still there no matter what. But when that doesn't happen, when she sees that you're not falling back into the old dynamic, something deeper starts to shift in her mind. She begins replaying every conversation, every moment of attitude, every time she dismissed your feelings or took your presence for granted. And the more she reflects, the more she feels a subtle burn of regret creeping in. It's not regret because she suddenly realizes she lost a guy. It's regret because she sees she lost the version of you who cared without hesitation. She's realizing how rare consistency is, how rare genuine effort is, and how rare it is to find someone who actually shows up without being asked. She's noticing that the attention she once brushed off so casually isn't something she can easily replace. The world is full of people who want something temporary, people who show interest only when it's convenient, people who lack emotional depth. But you weren't one of them. You were intentional, committed, and present. And the silence is forcing her to confront the uncomfortable truth that she didn't match the energy she was receiving. What really intensifies her regret is the realization that you didn't leave with anger, you withdrew with clarity. Silent clarity is far more powerful than loud confrontation. Silence means you've already accepted what the situation is and you've stopped trying to convince someone to appreciate what you naturally gave. That kind of calm withdrawal hits harder than any argument ever could because it shows her that you're no longer emotionally dependent. You're no longer waiting for her to change. You're no longer holding space for someone who didn't prioritize you when she had the chance. And in that clarity, she wonders if she misread your value. She wonders if she mistook your loyalty for weakness. She wonders if she confused your patience with desperation. Now she sees the truth. Your behavior didn't come from neediness, it came from love. But when love isn't reciprocated, a man who respects himself eventually pulls back. She didn't expect you to reach that point, yet here you are showing her exactly what it looks like when a man chooses peace over chasing. That's where regret hits its peak, right at the point where she realizes the version of you she knew no longer exists. You've evolved through the silence, you've matured through the distance, and she now understands that if she ever wants to reconnect with you, she won't be approaching the same man she once took for granted. She'll be facing someone stronger, wiser, and far more selective with his heart. As the silence stretches into weeks and the distance becomes the new normal, something unexpected starts to happen inside her. Her imagination begins working against her. At first, she thought she understood you. She believed she could predict your reactions, your feelings, your next move. She assumed she had you figured out. But your silence disrupts the pattern she built in her mind, and suddenly she has no script to follow. When a man who used to express himself openly becomes unreadable, a woman who relied on that emotional access begins to feel a growing uncertainty. She tries to guess what you're thinking, but every guess leads to another layer of doubt. She tries to predict what you'll do next, yet every prediction feels like a shot in the dark. That's where the overthinking begins. She starts imagining scenarios, some hopeful, some painful, all of them intense. She wonders if you've finally moved on emotionally. She wonders if you've been talking to someone new, someone who gives you the appreciation she withheld. She wonders if you're happier without the constant pressure of trying to prove your worth to someone who didn't meet you halfway. And even though she tries to push these thoughts away, They keep coming back because silence creates a space her mind can't leave empty. The longer you stay quiet, the more her imagination fills that silence with possibilities she isn't prepared to face. What really makes her anxious is not knowing where she stands anymore. Before, she could rely on your consistency. She knew your heart was present. She knew your intentions were genuine. She knew that no matter how distant she became, you would eventually reach out. That certainly gave her comfort, even when she pretended not to care. But now, with you breaking the pattern, she feels something she hasn't felt in a long time. She feels replaceable. And that idea hits harder than she ever expected. Not because she thinks you're desperate for options, but because she realizes that a man who can walk away silently is a man who has already regained emotional control. Your silence forces her to question what she once believed about herself. She begins to rethink her choices, her energy, her attitude. She wonders why she didn't match your effort when she had the chance. She wonders why she kept you waiting instead of nurturing the connection. She wonders if she misjudged your intentions, mistaking sincerity for weakness. And in that uncertainty, she starts recognizing a truth she ignored. You were not the problem. You were the stability she didn't know how to receive. Her anxiety grows because she understands something deeper. Now you get to happens next. The power dynamic has shifted. She is no longer evaluating you. She is waiting to be evaluated. She is no longer the one pulling away. She's the one hoping you still care. And the silence makes her feel that fragile, exposed feeling she thought she would never experience, the fear of losing someone who actually mattered. This is where the overthinking becomes intense because silence doesn't just make her miss you, it makes her realize what losing you truly means. As the silence grows heavier and the days continue to pass without a single message from you, something deep inside her begins to shift. She starts to see the reflection of her own behavior in a way she never allowed herself to before. In the past, whenever things felt uncertain, she could always blame you. She could say you were too emotional, too available, too invested. She could convince herself she wasn't ready, or that she needed space, or that she didn't want anything serious. But now, with you being perfectly still, with no emotional waves coming from your side, there is no one left for her to project onto. The silence becomes a mirror, one she can't escape, and for the first time, she has to sit with the consequences of her own choices. The excuses she used before suddenly sound hollow when she repeats them in her own mind. She starts realizing how often she played safe, how often she held back affection just to maintain control, how often she tested your commitment instead of appreciating it. And as she reflects, something unexpected hits her. She didn't just hurt you, she sabotaged her own chance at a genuine connection. She remembers the moments where you tried to communicate openly. She remembers the times you reached out just to make her smile. She remembers the energy you brought that most people don't. Now she's seeing clearly how she dismissed something good because she didn't think you would ever walk away. This clarity doesn't come gently. It comes like a slow burn, something that gets stronger each day. You stay quiet. She realizes you weren't chasing her out of desperation. You were showing love in the only way you knew. You weren't trying to force anything. You were trying to grow something with her, and she sees now that the very effort she once overlooked is the same effort she misses desperately. It hits her that she had a partner who was emotionally available, supportive, and consistent, and instead of meeting you halfway, she leaned back thinking she had unlimited time to figure things out. That illusion disappears the moment she feels the true distance of your silence. It's not just that she misses you, it's that she understands she contributed to creating the distance between you. She sees how her inconsistency made you question your place. She sees how her emotional unavailability pushed you into protecting yourself. She sees how her casual attitude slowly taught you to detach until your silence wasn't a strategy but a necessity. This self awareness isn't comfortable, but it's powerful. For the first time, she's not asking, why did he leave? She's asking, why did I give him reasons to? That question shakes her because it forces her to acknowledge something she never thought she would admit. She thought your loyalty was guaranteed. She thought your patience was endless. She thought your love was unconditional. But now she sees that even a good man reaches a point where he stops pouring into someone who isn't pouring back. And in that realization, she finally understands the true cost of taking someone for granted. As the final stretch of silence settles in, something inside her begins to transform. not out of pressure, not out of fear, but out of the undeniable truth that she can no longer escape. She starts to understand that this silence wasn't about punishing her or trying to make her chase. It wasn't about games or manipulation. It was about you reclaiming your self respect, your emotional balance, and your peace. And as she observes your stillness from a distance, she begins to recognize something she didn't see clearly before. You weren't asking for anything unreasonable. You weren't demanding perfection. You weren't trying to rush a connection. All you ever wanted was reciprocity, presence, an effort that matched your own. She realizes now that she confused your kindness for dependence, your vulnerability for weakness, and your consistent presence for something she'd never lose. But your silence has rewritten that story not with anger, but with maturity. Over these 30 days, she watches you without saying a word. She sees how grounded you seem, how you've become, how peaceful your energy is now, that you're no longer trying to force someone to see your value. She notices the difference in how you speak to others, how selective you've become, how much more sure you are of yourself. She sees you growing in ways she never expected because she thought the connection kept you anchored. But now she sees it clearly. You weren't anchored, you were loyal. And once that loyalty wasn't respected, you chose yourself. The silence gives her a front row seat to your glow up. And even though you're not doing it for her, she feels the impact of it. She sees the strength that comes from a man who finally values his own time, energy, and emotional well being. She sees the shift from a man who once tried to earn love to a man who now attracts love by being fully aligned with who he is. And that transformation doesn't just make her rethink the connection, it makes her admire you in a way she never allowed herself to before. Because for the first time, she sees the man behind the effort, the depth behind the consistency, the strength behind the silence. This reflection awakens something she kept buried, a new sense of appreciation, not the superficial kind that appears when someone is afraid of losing attention, but the deep kind that comes from understanding value through experience, not entitlement. She begins to see what you brought into her life, not as something ordinary, but as something rare. She sees the emotional safety you created, the stability you offered, the openness you shared. And for the first time, she doesn't just miss you, she respects you. She respects the way you handled the distance. She respects the way you protected your heart. She respects the way you allowed silence to do what talking never could. And in that respect, she feels something she didn't expect to feel again, the desire to meet you where you are, not where you used to be, because now she understands that if she ever wants to reconnect, she'll need to show up not with ego, not with games, but with honesty, effort, and emotional maturity. She realizes the silence didn't just change you, it changed her too.